Hey y'all, new day, new week, new chapter as we continue on into Matthew. Today we are starting Matthew 16. Today we are doing verses 1 up to 4. The leaders demanding miraculous sign. Let's dig in. One day, the Pharisees and Sadducees came to test Jesus, demanding that he show the miraculous sign from heaven to prove his authority. He replied, "You know the saying, red sky at night means fair warning tomorrow. Red sky in the morning means foul weather all day. You know how to interpret the weather signs in the sky, but you don't know how to interpret the signs of the times. Only an evil, adulterous generation would demand a miraculous sign, but the only sign I will give them is a sign of the prophet Jonah." Then Jesus left them and went away. I know it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot to unpack here, on the surface, but as I started digging into it, there was a great deal that went off to me. Not just the fact that the Pharisees and the Sadducees are the united adversary against Jesus in this moment. Because Pharisees and Sadducees come from two very different standpoints. But their dislike and their hatred of Jesus drew them together. And sometimes the enemy will do that. The enemy will bring adversaries together to try and double up on the pain and double up on the anguish. And it's an opportunity to say, yeah, but. Because God is greater still. God is greater than these struggles and difficulties. God is greater than when the adversaries mount up. And these adversaries here are demanding for a miraculous sign. They're doing much like the children of Israel, the people of Israel did in the wilderness. Yeah, sure, we're eating manna from heaven, but we don't have meat, so we're going to complain now. And they wanted quail, and God gave it to them. It was very much an irritation with them. He still did it. And it's interesting that we see this kind of thing happen again, where they're begging for it, and God goes, okay, I'm going to do it. But because you're not hearing me, I'm going to make it look a little different, just to make a point. And, there are some translations that don't really have the whole you understand how to interpret the weather. Or you don't know how to interpret the signs of the times, so you don't know how to interpret the weather. And part of me was thinking that it's just an issue of taste. Because if you understand storms and weather and stuff like that, it's a great thing to have in there. If you don't, then it could be a little bit confusing. For the longest time of my life, I really didn't I didn't know that's what had any effect or bearing on the weather. But it's interesting who the subject is that he's calling out about not knowing what's going on here. Because the Pharisees, the Sadducees, are people who are supposed to know the Tanakh instantly. They're supposed to have it memorized. And in following the letter of it, they miss the spirit entirely. They get lost in the thicket. And so, rather than see that Jesus is coming and setting the captive free, healing the blind, the lame, the sick, the deaf, that he's freeing those captive to anguish, whether it be mental or spiritual, he is setting the captive free. He is doing exactly what Isaiah promised, or rather what God promised through Isaiah would be more accurate. The book of Isaiah, not the man. And it's a beautiful thing to me that Jesus here is doing what the Word says he would do, what the Word says the Messiah will do. So his authority should be clear to everyone. And to those who are not the Pharisees and the Sadducees, but as one might say, the common man, they see the truth of God. And, I don't really like that expression. I prefer to call it what it is. Those who have a blessed position of seeing the struggle of reality. Because if you lived in a lofty tower, it's really easy to say, well, the Messiah isn't doing what I expect him to do, so this must not be him. When you're in the middle of struggle, when you're in the middle of trial, when you're in the middle of tribulation, and you've got no idea where to do, what to turn, how to go, and you're just sitting here throwing your arms up in surrender, that kind of trust in the Lord, when he sets it right, that's the kind of miracles that Jesus is performing. The Lord, Son of David, have mercy kind of miracles. Even centurions and Canaanites are seeing clearly that this is the Son of God, because he has the authority to set things right. And the people who are supposed to be in this position of knowing ahead of time, of knowing what to expect, these religious leaders are just that, religious. They miss all of it. They miss the opportunity of God walking and working in their very midst. And because of it, they ask for this miracle to be seen. Oh, prove your authority. It doesn't matter that no one has seen miracles like this in all Israel. We want to see a magic trick. And Jesus, much like his Father, much like our Abba, shows them an undeserved love even in the irritation. Because they are, he calls them out. Only an evil, adulterous generation would demand a miraculous deed. Yeah. Everything God has done and you're demanding a miracle rather than trusting that he will be faithful? Yeah, not okay. And yet, God shows his love and faithfulness in giving them a sign. The sign of the prophet Jonah. And I found myself thinking, okay, there's always something more going on here. And yeah, of course, we see in other versions or other verses of the Gospels where Jesus is, just like Jonah was in 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 nights and 3 days in the belly of the earth. It's like, okay, so that's one. What else is there? And I started thinking back to Jonah. What's actually there, not the VeggieTale version. And what's actually there is that, aside from the fact that Jonah isn't the particularly nicest gent in the world, he gives a very simple, very abrupt teaching in the city of Nineveh, in the center of it. And basically 5 words in Hebrew. Repent, for the end is near kind of thing. And the entire city, an entire group of people who were not Jewish by blood in any stretch of the imagination, heard that God was sick of what they were doing, and repented. Changed how they were doing. Because God is very merciful in saying, hey, you need to stop this. Jonah says, hey, this is going on, needs to stop. And the entire city turns. And I started thinking, well, wait a minute. That's another Jonah sign from the Lord to those who aren't quite paying attention either. That an entire city, an entire world, entire kingdom, if you will, of Gentiles, non-Jewish outsiders, would, at the word, come to call upon the God of Israel. And that is exactly what we see with Jesus. That the Word made flesh, to use John's nod of it, comes, speaks, and entire kingdoms shift. That's an amazing thing. That is showing that God has power over it, no matter what it may seem or what it may look like. That means that as long as we are chasing after Him, whether it be in the form of a physical prison of captivity or the going through the day-to-day, we have the opportunity to praise and stay in a state of gratitude and peace. Because the actions of the Word can change entire empires, can topple kingdoms, can rout giants and armies, can flood away destruction. God is generous in everything He does. We may not see it or recognize it, but sometimes I think that is because a more generous heart is needed. Something that if we ask, He will get. A more gratitude-filled heart, especially. Because I find myself thinking that if we don't at least start by trying to count off 3 blessings, we're going to be in a place of struggle for most of the day. Not as a self-help thing, as a perspective shift. A perspective shift of gratitude. A perspective shift of the fact that, yes, God is greater. So, I woke up today in pain, but God is greater. I woke up. Yes, a little sore, a little stiff, hurts to get moving. but I have covering, and I have a place to lay down. I have food to eat. I have a million things to be grateful for. We all do, long before we ever get up, especially if we exist in the Western world. We're straight up spoiled out here. And I don't think it's an issue of, just fake it till you make it gratitude. No, it's a literal shift. Focusing on the fact that, here, a miraculous sign is demanded. He just says, I'll give you the sign of Jonah. On the surface, so nothing? A sign out of a piece of satire? What are you talking about here? No. Deeper. Deeper into the gratitude that God, with a word, can set it right. Deeper into the reassurance that He has all things in the palm of His hand and is in control of all things at all times. So there is no need to fear. That is part of the gift. It's a place of trust. That we don't have to ask for the miraculous sign or wonder. We can thank Him that He's going to do everything He promised, and we'll see to it. We don't have to keep begging for God to do something when He knows the desires of our heart. Simply come to Him and say, Lord, this is what's up. Just lay it before Him. Lay us before Him. Because He already knows. And Jesus knew exactly what the Pharisees and the Sadducees were thinking before they bothered asking Him for a sign. And we have this position and place of gift where we can be grateful. Grateful that Jesus has already set that gap right. Grateful that God will never leave us nor forsake us. Grateful that we can hold to Him in all things, in all places, in all times. So that even if the signs of the world are that it is going to hell in a handbasket, we can rejoice in the Lord, not in the world. In the fact that He is greater than the trials and tribulations, not in the fact that we have them. And we can rejoice in the fact that when there are trials and difficulties, His grace is sufficient to get us through. That is the God we serve. The God of greater than, a God of more than enough. The God who sees to it. The God who is our banner and our miracle worker. So why not start from a place of gratitude today? Instead of saying, God, it doesn't look the way I want it to, so I'm just going to complain. Start from a place of praise. Start from a question of, how can I thank you for a day this beautiful? There's always beauty. The question is, do we wish to actively seek it out and focus on the things that are good, pure, true, worthy to be praised, to borrow from Paul? It's all the Lord's words anyway. That's the idea here. Do we want to chase after the beauty of the Lord? Or do we want to stay focused on the muck throwing of the world? Because the world is always going to ask for a better magic trick. Faith knows that honey can come from rocks, and that water will pour out by speaking to a stone. Faith knows that you can walk on water, and that a few fish can feed an army, that a couple of loaves of bread can feed the world. It's who we put the trust in, whose power we're going to rely on, our own, the world's, or God's. As the moment we stop thinking we're the ones making it through and start realizing that He's giving us the strength to make it, and we can be glad that He has, suddenly we're not trying to wrestle against the world in our own strength, but we're in a place of praise, knowing that Friday's disappointment is Sunday's empty tomb, knowing that 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the earth is an enthronement to a place of the right hand of God where sin, hell, death, and the grave have no power. To a place of resurrection where the source of eternal life pours out. You don't have to ask for a magic trick. Trust God to be true to His character, and you'll see miracles. I'll promise you that. Don't give up. Lean into him. And you will see that the Word acting in your life can change everything. I promise. I will see you guys tomorrow as we continue on into verses 5 through 12. Jesus, the yeast of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. I look forward to continuing on. Have faith. Know that you are loved. And remember, He will not let you down. He will not leave you, and He will not forsake you. So enjoy the fact that we are sojourners on this beautiful playground until our daddy finally comes home. I'll see you then.